Hi everyone, and welcome to my Zoom meeting on past lives on the Geodetic world map. Geoffrey Wolfe Green developed a method using geodetic equivalents and midpoints to pinpoint the actual dates of past lives through the ages and sub-ages. That material, however, holds copyright, so we won't be using it today. Today, we are simply going to place all our personal planets and planetary south nodes within the geodetic world map in order to draw upon specific past life localities that are relevant to the current life. Geodetic equivalence was developed by astrologer Edward Jondro. Jondro was a mathematician, physicist, and radio engineer who honed his scientific approach to astrology. He was a brilliant original thinker ahead of his time who discovered new concepts that traditional astrologers rejected. Technical achievements: he co-discovered the vertex and the anti-vertex with Charles Jane, established a basis for locational astrology, precise examination of event timing even without a birth time, advanced work on stock market relationships, and he was America's finest technical astrologer. Here's Edward Jondro's birth chart. Jondro's intellectual brilliance and esoteric aspects can easily be seen in his chart. Okay, a powerhouse Scorpio ascendant, Pluto, Taurus, 7th house, conjunct the South Node, ruled by inventive and innovative Venus Aquarius 3rd. The South Node Gemini 8th, ruled by Mercury Aquarius 4th. In-depth technical astrological investigations. Search for cosmological knowledge with the North Node Sagittarius in the 2nd. Sorry, that's the 1st in this chart. The brilliance and genius of the Sun Aquarius 3rd house and Uranus Virgo 11th. A Leo midheaven ruled by Sun Aquarius 3rd. 3 personal planets in future-oriented Aquarius. And the South Node conjunct Pluto. This can be an extreme situation of absolute karmic and evolutionary fruition, fueled by sufficiently pure motives and intentions that bring in some special capacity, ability, or resource, Pluto, developed thoroughly from past lifetimes. In this karmic evolutionary condition, the requirement is to disseminate or share that resource with others. Jondro proposed that the zodiacal signs could stretch around the entire Earth in 30-degree segments. This band begins at 0 degrees Aries at Greenwich, England. It then moves east 30 degrees, where Taurus begins, and so on. Geodetic equivalents are fixed reference points that help us to understand the general local environments, social conditions, and cultures of those localities used in evolutionary astrology. The cardinal, fixed, and mutable crosses. Each zodiacal zone contains the 3 other signs of its modality, cardinal, fixed, mutable, that refer to the natural points on the equator, north, south, east, and west. For example, those born in the Pluto and Leo generation would naturally connect with the Scorpio, Aquarius, and Taurus zones, as well as the Leo zone. So the Leo zone encompasses Russia, Japan, Philippines, Indonesia, and Australia. The Scorpio zone, Canada, USA. Aquarius zone, Iceland, Greenland, South America, and the Taurus zone, Russia, Middle East, East Africa. Thus, the Leo generation shares the collective consciousness of those past life localities. Here's the geodetic world map, and the line running down the center is the prime meridian, the line of longitude that passes through Greenwich, England, the 0 line for calculating longitude on the Earth's surface. I am here in Australia. My longitude is 152 East 43, and that correlates to 2 degrees Virgo. And today's chart, April 6, 2017, where I am right now is Dorrigo, Australia. The longitude 152.43 East, 152.43 East. Sorry, that was my rooster. Can't help laughing. Oh dear. Yeah, in absolute longitude correlates to the, sorry. Oh dear. I'm going to have the giggles now. Oh my God. Never mind. Okay, I'll read that again. 1524.
I like the giggles.
I've got the giggles. Uh-oh. Sorry,
he wants
everyone.
us to listen to this.
Oh my God.
This is something we need to hear.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I love giggles.
Oh dear. Okay. 152.43 East in absolute longitude correlates to the equivalent zodiacal degree of 2 degrees Virgo, which is the current position of the transiting North Node. And here's a little extract from this site here, skyscript.co.uk. Which allows you to convert any zodiacal degree to the longitude degree. And this point, absolute longitude, is determined by the relative positions of the Sun, Moon, and Earth. And once again, here I am in Australia, just here on the East Coast, and here's the chart for today, and the North Node is at 2 degrees Virgo, exactly where I am here on the map. Okay. And here are a few pictures of my neck of the woods where I live. The first one here is Crystal Falls at the Dorrigo National Park. This one below is Dangar Falls, Dorrigo. This one up here is the view from the Bellingen Valley looking up to where I am up there on the escarpment. The middle one is a beautiful photo of I think that's a tallowood tree from the Dorrigo National Park. There's my house down here. That's where I am, that's where I live. I'm pretty isolated and I like it that way. Up here we have the boardwalk at the Dorrigo National Park. Here we're looking down at the Thora Valley, which is so beautiful. And here is just a picture of a waterfall. Okay. So here we have the geodetic world map again, and you can see all the zones marked out on this map. And I know that a lot of you here today are attending this meeting from the West Coast USA, so you would be in the Scorpio zone. And some of you are from the mid-USA, mid-central USA, and that's the Sag zone, and Eastern USA is the Capricorn zone. And where I am over here is the Virgo zone. And anyone visiting us from Europe, they're in the Aries zone. England is the Pisces zone. And here's the line of the prime meridian at Greenwich, England, which passes right through England there. Okay. And the next map is, okay, here are a couple of Earth events that geodetic equivalence is used to track. The tsunami that took place in Southeast Asia, transiting Saturn was at the exact longitude for the center of the earthquake. So it was around here somewhere. And so we can see the transiting Saturn was at that exact spot. And the nuclear bomb dropped on Hiroshima, USA's North Node 5 degrees Leo, close to the geodetic longitude of Japan. Transiting Pluto, which correlates to nuclear bombs, was exactly at 5 degrees Leo on that day the bomb was dropped. Now, the Pluto and Capricorn transit, of course, takes place in the Capricorn zone. Principally, that's the hot spot. So I would say the East Coast USA is really highly impacted by this transit. And that would naturally then be associated with the Libra zone, the Aries zone, and the Cancer zone. Okay, but principally the Capricorn zone here. Carolyn, are you here with us?
Yes, I am.
Oh, great, Carolyn, fantastic. Are you interested in turning your video on, or would you prefer to keep it off?
I prefer to keep it off tonight.
Okay, that's absolutely fine, that's fine. Okay, so here's Carolyn's chart, and we'll get more into her chart in a moment. The use of the geodetic world map helps us understand the general local environments. Just 1 second. Okay, Carolyn, if you could just keep yourself muted, and then you can unmute yourself later. Thank you. So the use of the geodetic world map helps us understand the general local environments, social conditions, and cultures of those localities. It does not represent the soul's entire history. So this chart here for Carolyn is just the chart for this life. It is not the entire history of her soul, but just a very small part that directly relates to the evolutionary intentions in the current life. Carolyn is drawing upon these specific past lives in her current life. The sun is not included because it is a current life symbol. So here's Carolyn's chart on the left. We will now place Carolyn's personal planets and planetary south nodes. The signs are in blue and the houses marked in red into the geodetic world map. So we'll start over here in Libra. We won't go through all of them, but I'll just demonstrate how it's done. Okay, we go to where Libra is in her chart. And of course, she has Neptune in Libra, so we add Neptune to this Libra zone. She has Mercury in the 7th house. The 7th house is the house of Libra, so we add Mercury there. In her 7th house is the South Node, Mars. Chiron is also there, actually. And also the South Node of Mars here and the South Node of Venus. They're all in the 7th house. They all go into the Libra zone. And I'll demonstrate with one more zone. Let's go to the Scorpio zone. She has Mercury in Scorpio, in the sign Scorpio. She has the South Node in Scorpio, Mars in Scorpio, South Node Mars, South Node Venus in Scorpio, and she has the South Node of Uranus in the 8th house, right? So then that is placed in this zone. And you go through every planet, every house, and place them into the geodetic world map as I've done here. Planets in Libra are drawing on a series of specific lifetimes, experiences, themes, and lessons lived in the geodetic Libra zone, and also the Capricorn, Aries, and Cancer zones. So don't forget that whatever is happening here in the Libra zone is naturally connected to Capricorn, Aries, and Cancer. This method validates past life experiences and memories that filter into consciousness and perception and allow potential resolution of evolutionary intentions. We'll go on to the next slide. Okay, so what can we say about these past life localities that Carolyn is drawing upon in her current life? So basically, this is an introduction to the geodetic world map. I mean, it's been around for a very long time, of course. Edward Jondro worked with it, and he invented it. But we're just going to play around a little bit and just see what we can see. Nothing definitive, just correlating the archetypes to the zones on the world map. So we'll start over here with the North Node in the first house. I didn't put the sign in, did I? So it must be the Aries zone. Okay, so the Aries zone. Future lives perhaps in Norway, Sweden, Europe and Africa. We don't know this for sure, but you know, the North Node is the future, so there's some sort of futuristic connection with that, and perhaps even, well, I'm sure in the current life, Carolyn would have some friends in this zone and would be quite attracted to this zone. What do you think, Carolyn? Don't forget to unmute yourself.
I know I've got my, okay. So in the North Node under Aries, my North Node is actually in Taurus, but
yes, it's in the first house. I'm sorry, it's in the first house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do have connections and friends in England and France. I traveled there.
Okay. Yep. A little bit of England there. Yes.
Yeah.
And I know that Sol is a friend of yours.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, she's one of our Zoom presenters.
Yeah. Nice connection with Sol, of course.
Absolutely.
I forget how important Facebook friends are.
Yes, absolutely.
And she is truly a friend. Yeah, okay, for sure.
And so your North Node is actually in Taurus, so we also put that here in the Taurus zone. And so perhaps, you know, future life or future connections, even in the current life, with Russia, Middle East, and East Africa. What do you think of that one?
My daughter is part Hungarian, and she has very strong connections in her heart to Russia.
Right.
And I was surprised if someday she went back there or went there, you know, for the first time. She didn't make it the last time she was overseas, but I do have a connection to Russia. And I've had, there's something about Russia that has often called to me. I had a great grandfather who sold tools all across Europe. He was from Blackpool, but he did sell tools all across Europe, including Russia. Wow. And I do feel a connection to Russia.
Okay, and it's interesting that you mentioned your daughter, because don't forget that these zones are connected to the natural crosses. Mm-hmm. So the natural cross associated with Taurus is Leo, and that is where your daughter would come in. And the others are Scorpio and Aquarius. So you can see how it's connected.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So let's move along. Uranus in the third house. Okay, so you have Uranus in the third house in your chart. I couldn't fit the chart on this slide. It was a little bit too much information. And so deconditioning and accelerated evolution in these localities, Russia, Kazakhstan, and China and India. And here we perhaps are talking, of course, about past lives, right? Oops, be careful.
Okay.
So anything come to mind, any intuitive promptings coming up for you around that?
I hadn't thought about it for a long time, but when I went back to England in the middle 70s, I remember seeing a statue of Gandhi. hotel or something. And I remember being very, very drawn and very, very intrigued. And I started really meditating then. And I felt that he was, I suppose this sounds a little odd, but I felt that he was around, like he was close. That would be my Indian connection. And I knew quite a few Asian people when I lived in Los Angeles. So China was very, very, very interesting to me. And
That's
still
fascinating.
is.
Would you say that Gandhi? I'm getting feedback. Sorry. Perhaps you could just mute yourself, Carolyn. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's better. Okay. I suppose Gandhi would be a symbol of liberation for you, either in past lives and in the current life. So that, yeah.
Very much so. I also, as a teacher, I didn't like to teach the same things every year, but every year, depending upon their maturity, my grade 5 or 6 moral and religious instruction classes, I would do the Gandhi film, and they loved it, and I loved it, and it was a real feeling. It was the liberation. It was them learning about the intolerance. It was magical.
Well, that is just so magical, because Uranus is in Gemini, which is the sign of teaching and learning. It's in the 3rd house, I'm sorry, but it's actually in the sign of Cancer, in the 4th house. And I just love these little correlations that you're sharing with us. Fantastic. Okay, let's move on to Uranus in Cancer and Pluto in the 4th house. And this zone encompasses China, Mongolia, Russia, Mongolia, China, Malaysia, and India, liberating from past life dynamics that have prevented evolutionary growth. And do you have anything to say about that one, Carolyn? Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Right. I can chew gum and walk. Okay. I've always been intrigued with Mongolia, with the steppes, with the horses that would gallop through there, with that nomadic life. I have always found that not something I would want to do this lifetime, but very, very compelling.
Oh my gosh, that is so interesting. So interesting. Because this is really the first time we've done this, that I've done this. So this is great feedback. Thank you so much. And so let's move on to Pluto and Venus in Leo, and Venus and Saturn in the 5th house in the Leo zone. And this could mean evolutionary growth, relationship dynamics, conditioning patterns that create your reality, and it could be marriage as well, because Venus and Saturn together can be marriage. And the countries here in this zone are Russia, Japan, Philippines, Indonesia, and Australia. So what connections do you have to this zone? Don't forget to unmute yourself. There you go. I've unmuted you.
Okay, sorry. Okay. When I was in London in the 71, 72, I met an Australian fellow from Perth.
Right.
And we got quite serious, and I thought I was going to move to Perth, Australia.
Well, Carolyn, that's actually in the Cancer zone. Perth is just there. But that's okay. Keep going.
Okay. I also, when I was in, I remember going to Expo 67 in Montreal and going to the Australian pavilion.
Right.
And finding it so familiar.
Ah.
It was just like, I kept going back to it. I was just enchanted. I
Well,
was just drawn.
the ancient Australian country is where the Australian Aborigines are. Australia is the oldest land on Earth, which means the actual land that is exposed to the air is the actual oldest anywhere on the Earth. So it's an amazing land. And the Aborigines, well, we know their culture has been here for about 50,000 years. And the Leo time period was about the Leo age, the age of Leo was about 10,000 years ago. And, you could very well have been an Aborigine living in Australia. And these, with your Pluto, Venus, Saturn connections, brought into the current life. Any comments?
I don't know. Not more than that. I am very Caucasian looking, but I can remember when I was a teenager, I got a very reddish suntan color, and I was very blonde. And my father used to call me, and my hair was in braids, but my father used to call me his blonde Indian.
Oh, wow.
And that was a good thing. It was
Yes.
like the Aboriginal, been drawn to the Aboriginal.
Yes. Sorry, we've lost you there. Carolyn? Oh, no, we don't want to lose Carolyn. This is so fascinating. Carolyn, are you there?
Sorry about that. I kicked out. Just the feeling of the oldness of the earth, the oldness of walking on land that I know has been walked on so many hundreds, thousands of years ago.
Also, bear in mind that we hold within us, in our soul, every culture that we've lived in before. So even though in this lifetime you have blonde hair and blue eyes, you could feel like an Indian inside, perhaps. Do you know what I mean? So we're bringing them into this current life with us.
I feel that very strongly. I feel that I always say that lines on the map are just lines. They don't mean much. We are all one now and forever. We have all been one.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Carolyn, let's move on to the next zone. Saturn and Moon in Virgo, and the Moon, Neptune, South Node, and Mercury in the 6th house. Now, this would be balancing the masculine and feminine roles because of the Moon and the Saturn. Sadomasochism is associated with this Virgo zone. Disillusionment is Neptune. Old mental structures is the South Node Mercury, and of course the emotional patterns of the Moon. And the countries here are Russia, at the top here, Eastern Australia, and New Zealand. Any connections to any of these parts of the world?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was traveling through Europe with actually a tour bus that was driven by an Australian, and we ran into all sorts of Kiwis, and it was just, Australians, New Zealanders were who you met and who became your friends.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
It was lovely.
Yeah, let's go on to the next one. Okay. Would you like to go through all of these, or just, another 5 more?
Okay.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so starting over here in the Libra zone, you have Neptune in Libra. And in the 7th house, you have Mercury, South Node Mars, and South Node Venus here in the Libra zone. And You can see how the Libra zone is so far away from everything else in the world. And Libra is associated with extremes. So it's that Alaskan, USA, freezing cold, isolated, extreme weather. Okay. And so Libra is extremes and Neptune is disillusionment. Libra is relationships. The masculinity comes in with Mars, sexuality as well, inequality of Libra. The lies can be Neptune, coldness, isolation, and this is the USA Alaskan zone here. Any comments?
I have never, ever wanted to go north. I am afraid of the extreme cold. I am afraid of the desolation. I want nothing to do with it.
Okay. What about your relationships? Is there something you can share about the relationships you've had in your life? How have they been?
Pretty cold.
Oh, okay. That says it all, doesn't it? That says all.
Yeah.
What else can you tell us? And then we'll move on to the next one.
Just that, except being disillusioned by people that I thought were honest and true and who were amazingly cold and calculating.
Ooh. Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Okay, so moving over to the Scorpio zone, you have quite a few planets here. You've got Mercury, the South Node, Mars, the South Node Mars, and the South Node of Venus. And the South Node of Uranus is in the 8th house. So you have all of those in Scorpio and one of them in the 8th house. And this zone is USA and Canada. And Scorpio is correlated to committed relationships, sudden endings, betrayals, abandonment, loss. And Uranus down here, South Node of Uranus, is liberation, deconditioning, etc. Any comments on this zone or any of these experiences in your life? Oops, I'll have to unmute her again. There we go. There we go, Carolyn.
Oh, I thought I was unmuted. Oh, well.
That's okay.
Yeah, she was living, my daughter, I say, lived my grade 5 history book with the Beaufort Sea and the Northwest Passage. And I did go and see her in Hay River, which wasn't all that far north, but yeah, she lived up there for a few years as a journalist and became pretty familiar with the culture, with the people, stayed with a woman through the trial of her daughter's murderer, was her support. So through Sarah, I have felt a connection there, but as I say, nowhere. I don't even like pictures of cold. I wouldn't see, what is it, the Leonardo DiCaprio movie? I wouldn't see that if you paid me.
Which movie was that?
The Revelator, it was about him stumbling around in a fur coat, lost.
That one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have a real obsession against cold and isolated.
Interesting, very interesting, because you do have the South Node of Uranus there, which is trauma held within your soul from the past. And a Scorpio, when you mentioned the murder, well, you know, Scorpio, of course, can encompass all those grisly sorts of experiences, can't they? Yuck. Yeah, and Mars, of course, Mars, the aggression, the South Node of Mars there. Yeah, and that zone is connected to the Leo zone here with your daughter. So there is a connection. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the next one. We're up to now this one, Jupiter and the South Node of Jupiter in Sagittarius. and Jupiter and the south node of Jupiter in the 9th house. Philosophies, beliefs based on natural laws, Native Indians, Mexican and Native American cultures. How do you feel about this zone?
I'm thinking, it's funny, I flash back to a course I took when Sarah was 3. I had to go back to university and use my mind for something. And I took a course on group dynamics, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of First Nation members, and there were some really, really good connections there.
That's wonderful. Yes, yes.
I went to, in 78, I went to Vancouver via the Grand Canyon, and we drove down through Route 66, and I can remember driving down the Oregon Trail, which was a highway,
Mm-hmm.
and just being able to see the covered wagons, and the feeling of, I suppose it's further east, but crossing the Mississippi, just stopping in Flagstaff, Arizona, and just feeling a lot of comfort.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, Jupiter is a very positive sign, and look at all the Jupiter in this zone. It's all Jupiter, right?
Yeah.
And it's the great frontier. It's expansion. It's discovering new lands. Perhaps you had a past life there as one of the pioneers traveling across the USA. Maybe. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the Capricorn zone.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This is the one, I think, that I have had past life regressions. I went into a spontaneous past life regression when I was in Los Angeles in 86, 87, and I saw myself being burned at the stake. And I dealt with that memory, and I had always been afraid of leaving a fireplace, like just leaving the fire on, because I was sure I was going to come back into the room and the whole room would be ablaze. Anyway, so I went through this past life regression, and then I worked with it in July with Anne Ortley, an astrologer, and we rounded out the story because she asked me what had happened to me when I was 7 months old. And I said, well, I nearly died from the measles because the spots didn't come out. And my temperature went up to 107. And from there we went to and my grandfather had stayed by my crib, and the doctor figured he was the only reason I decided to stay around. So we figured that one possible story was that I was being burned at the stake, and that my grandfather, whoever he was at that time, had killed me so that I wouldn't have the pain of dying in a fire. But and he would come back this life to get me started, which, considering the bond I had with my grandfather up until I was 10 or 11, was very, very strong. And certainly the feelings of being a medicine woman, of being burned at the stake, are very, very clear.
Wow, that's so fascinating. So, so the Capricorn zone is associated with the Libra zone, the Aries zone, which I suppose brings in the fire there, and the Cancer zone of the experience of when you were a baby at 7 months, right? And then this is all to do with death. Saturn, the Grim Reaper, Pluto, death, Neptune, dissolution of the life, Pluto and Saturn again. So you can see all the death symbols here.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the next zone, south node of Neptune in Aquarius, the Aquarius zone, Greenland, South America, groups, liberation, and disillusionment. So here we have a very cold place where perhaps trauma set in past lives. Any comments on this one? And disillusionment, of course.
Nothing much more than I've said about those subjects before.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
that.
That's fine. That's fine. And so the Pisces zone does not have anything there, but this does not mean that you didn't have past lives in this zone. So everything on this map relates to the current life. Past life localities to do with the current life only, but not all of your past lives. So Carolyn, can you just quickly tell me where you have been around the world? You're currently living here in the Capricorn zone, right, in Canada?
Yeah.
Can you tell me, you have not been to the Libra zone, right?
No.
No. What about the Scorpio zone? Have you been to San Francisco, Los Angeles?
Los Angeles, I lived in for a year.
Okay. Mid USA, the central USA or Canada?
Yeah.
Sorry, can't hear you. Could you come a bit closer?
Yeah. I drove. That's strange. It turned up my mic. I drove through there. As I say, rode the Route 66 on.
Yeah. If you could just come closer to your microphone.
That is. Just let me see if it turned
It's
down.
okay now.
Okay.
It's okay. Good.
Okay.
And so you're living here in the Capricorn zone, and you haven't been to Greenland, right?
No.
Nope.
I've been a lot over the United States. I've been
Yes.
down to the Cayman Islands.
Yes. Have you been down to South America?
No.
Mexico?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, have you been to England?
Oh, yes. I lived in England over the winter of
Lovely.
71, 72.
Okay. What about Spain, Portugal?
Traveled through all of them briefly. I remember La Belena Alegre, a beautiful beach in Barcelona.
Lovely.
But I've been for a lot of Eastern, well, not East Europe, from kind of Spain to Greece.
Okay.
And from the Netherlands south.
Okay, so that's okay. So that's Europe there. What about Africa? Have you been to Africa?
No.
Nope. Okay. What about this zone here, the Taurus zone? Any countries there, or the next zone?
Okay, I'm trying to think what's there. I'm having a hard time.
Let's just hang on a sec. Look, go to this map here where I've got them. Okay, we're up to this zone here, the Taurus zone, Russia, Middle East, East Africa. No.
Okay, Europe. I went to Greek, not just Greece so much as the Cyclades Islands.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well that was the previous zone. That's good.
Yeah, I love very much.
And you've been all over Europe, right? Just briefly through Europe?
Yeah.
Have you been to Sweden or Norway?
No.
No. Okay, that's good. Okay, and you've been not to Russia, Middle East?
No.
No. And what about China, India?
No.
Anything in the rest of the world here that you've been to?
No.
No. Okay, so really about half of the map almost you haven't covered, and the other half you have. Well, that's interesting. Okay, so summary. Many past life localities in Libra, Scorpio, Sag, Capricorn, Leo, and Virgo zones. With your Jupiter in Sag in the 9th house and your North Node in Taurus in the first house, perhaps a future evolutionary desire to expand and grow via other cultures, such as travel to the Aries and Taurus zones, which you've already been to Europe anyway, so that's happening. Your soul obviously desires to explore new paths and directions in an instinctual and free way. So this relates to your North Node in Taurus in the first house, which is this zone here. So we're not saying definitely, but it could be that you may wish to travel to these countries because of your North Node. Okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you, Carolyn. So we'll just move
thank
along.
you, Linda.
Thank you so much. That was
excellent.
so interesting. You are a fantastic volunteer. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so here we're just covering the Great American Solar Eclipse, which will take place on the 21st of August this year, 2017, at 28 Leo 53. So this line over here, this one over here is where the eclipse takes place, the conjunction of the sun and the moon. And 28 Leo, so it goes through Australia. It's very near to where I live as well, through Indonesia, just on the west, the east of Japan, and through Russia. And so solar eclipses are highly visible events, big news, specific people and nations. Lunar eclipses are disruptive events that are less visible, covert actions, repetitive and more personal. The total solar eclipse, 145 Saros, will have the most impact where it is visible through the USA. So the last solar eclipse that split the USA in half took place at the end of the Civil War. Astrologer Charles Jane, who worked closely with Edward Jonson, noted that a solar eclipse that split the USA in half and impacted the chart of Robert E. Lee was associated with the Civil War. The Great American Solar Eclipse of 21 August 2017 at 28 degrees Leo 53 will once again split the USA in half. Today we are seeing a similar idea of a divided, extremely polarized nation because the solar eclipse path will go straight through USA. Important impact areas will be the Southeast, Nashville, Kansas City, and Atlanta. The solar eclipse of 21 August 2017 impacts Trump's Mars and ascendant within 1 minute. The fixed star Rigel, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Rigel in Orion's belt and the Pleiades in Taurus are setting during this eclipse, dealing with finances, money, violent upheavals, revolts, and protests. This will be Trump's first real test. Libra is sitting on the horizon with protests over economic or financial injustices. And here's the total solar eclipse on the geodetic world map. And here's the chart for the conjunction of the sun moon at 28 Leo 53. Looking at the chart first of all, notice how Uranus makes 7 trines, including trines to the solar eclipse and the North Node. Similarly, Saturn forms 5 trines, including trines to the solar eclipse and the North Node. So we have a great big fire grand trine between Saturn, Uranus, Mars, North Node, Sun, Moon. That's pretty amazing. You can see the pattern on the chart here, how there is a huge build-up in this area up here. And there's a cardinal T-square between Jupiter, Pluto, and Venus. And this will happen at the time of the solar eclipse. And so I put the planets here on the geodetic world map. And I don't really know what to make of it, but anyway, the focal point of the eclipse is over here, Sun, Moon at 28 degrees Leo, impacting this zone here. And the North Node is at 24 degrees Leo, going through Australia, Indonesia, Japan, Russia. And the other planets, Jupiter in the Libra zone, Saturn in mid-USA zone. Pluto is eastern USA. Neptune and Chiron will be in the England, West African zone of Pisces. Uranus at 28 degrees Aries in Europe. Venus at 24 degrees Cancer in the Cancer zone. So let's just see what happens. Don't forget that the solar eclipse impacts, spreads out a whole year before, 6 months before and 6 months after the actual eclipse. So any events that are happening now can be associated with this total solar eclipse. It has begun, okay, so it's happening. And over to the last slide, a little bit of fun. Okay, so we have the zones, the geodetic zones, and where we all live on the world map. So we have Sabrina, Sue, Olive, Sarah, and Tashi over here in the Scorpio zone. Way, Dawn, and Robin in the Sagittarius zone. Carolyn, Wendy, and Wanda, and Gonzalo in the Capricorn zone. Victoria in the Pisces zone. Saul, Simon, and Jen in the Aries zone. Priya in the Cancer zone, and Way wanted to know her birthplace. So that's in the Cancer zone, Way. That's at 23 degrees Cancer. And I'm over here in the Virgo zone in Australia. So please feel free to unmute yourself. And what can you tell us about your zone? And what can you correlate to the other zones? Okay, I'm going to, okay, Sue, go ahead.
Okay, well, so I'm in the Scorpio zone, and but I grew up in the Sagittarius zone, and I was born in the Capricorn zone.
Oh, wow.
And so I spent 10 years in the Capricorn zone, and then 10 years approximately in the Sagittarius zone, and the rest of my life I've been in California 45 years.
So yes, carry on, sorry.
So my heritage is the Capricorn zone. My ancestor, my relatives are from Nova Scotia, Newfoundland.
Right.
I went to school in the Sagittarius zone, and like I said, I've lived in the Scorpio zone, and I think have just deepened my just my connection to life, and have gone, just gone deep into all kinds of things since I've been here. I definitely had a scorpionic relationship in the Pluto and Scorpio days. About it.
Fantastic, fantastic. So what about Olives and Tashi? Any comments about this zone where you live? Scorpio zone?
Hello. Am I in Scorpio? I only got Carolyn's. I can't really see, so I only have the one thing, and it kept crashing, Linda. So am I in Scorpio zone?
Are you guys looking for me?
Tashi, just a moment. Yeah.
Tashi, because I can't see, so you
Okay,
go.
go ahead, Tashi.
Okay, I didn't hear what you said. My phone rang, so I was on mute and gone for a minute.
No problem. Tashi, you're living currently in the Scorpio zone.
Oh, okay.
Los Angeles, yeah.
Yeah.
So what comes to mind?
Let's see. I love it here. And I have Saturn in Scorpio.
Right.
And Pluto in the second, so it's in the second Scorpio. I feel it's a very self-empowering place for me. I just love this part of the world, and I've traveled a lot. I've been in a lot of places. So I'm choosing to live here. It's a very happy place for me.
Excellent.
Yeah, I don't know why exactly from, everything in the chart. I've been listening, but I don't know why I like it. It's interesting. I really like Asia too. And I have moon in Capricorn, so that bottom column, and Cancer rising. And I've been there a lot. And I've been to Australia and taught there. And I have I have, a lot of things. So I'm just like, that was one of my favorite areas, was the Melbourne, middle of Australia area, and Asia above it, which I loved.
Maybe you are happy living in the Scorpio zone because you're an evolutionary astrologer?
Could be. And in fact, you know what, Linda, that is the right answer.
Yeah.
You know why I like living here? And I used to tell people this. Everybody in California knows their rising sign.
Right.
Oh, and actually, Australia people are pretty conscious too, I noticed.
Right.
But the rest of the world, people don't really know their rising sign.
Okay. All right, Tashi, thank you so much. And what about the Sag zone? Do we have Wei or Dawn here with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Wei.
I wonder if the Denver is in the near the degree of my Uranus here.
What degree is it?
15 to 16, I believe.
Okay, so it's right down the center. And where I suppose that's where you're living, aren't you?
Yeah, I think it should be very close because I feel the liberate energy here, and it's a mountain, so it's so close to the nature. So I really love here.
Wow, that's fascinating. And Uranus, well, liberating from the past.
Yeah.
In a real big way for you. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Wei. Thank you. And so we've heard from Carolyn and Wendy or Wanda. Any comments on your zone, the Capricorn zone?
Definitely patriarchal.
Right. Okay, yes.
Woman should be at home in the kitchen.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay.
That's about the best that I can say. Though I have traveled to the Aries area.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Is Wendy here with us? I think her microphone wasn't working earlier. Okay, never mind. Okay. So, there's nobody else here just except myself here in the Virgo zone and 2 degrees Virgo where I live. So I guess I do have a huge focus on health, work, healing, and also Virgo is in my 11th house. So, I am associated with groups and ruled by Mercury in the 3rd house. So a very packed 3rd house for me. So there we are, everybody. Any requests to go back to one of the slides, or shall we just wind down now? Any comments or any questions?
I thought it was very fascinating. My 4th house is 2 degrees Virgo, Linda.
Oh, beautiful. That's interesting. Yeah.
Maybe I should move to Australia.
Oh, yeah. Look where I am, so far away from you. So far
It's fall,
away.
right? Maybe I come tomorrow.
Oh, that'll be good. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I did have a question. Do we also put the house cusp, since Olive mentioned that? Do we put that on here too as well?
No, just the planets and the house.
Just the planet. Oh, okay, in the house of the
planets
okay.
In the house. Okay. Yeah, you could put the degrees in, but so it's a very simple method. It's certainly not the full method of that Jeffrey Wolf Green is developing. This is just a tiny little introduction to the geodetic world map, and we can all take it from here and experiment and have a bit of fun. Okay, any final questions? And if not, we will wind down the meeting. Okay, Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
That was really
Thank you to
fascinating.
Glinda.
It's awesome.
Well,
Just excellent.
and thank you so much, Carolyn. You're an excellent volunteer. And thank you all for the comments. And see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
bye.
Bye.